Grand Operational Simulation Series. Rules, GOS, basic rules. Replacements and mode. In order to receive replacement steps, a unit must be in tactical mode. It cannot be fatigued or attack designated. Note: mech units may not be adjacent to an enemy unit, may not be observed by an enemy ground unit. Leg units may be adjacent to an enemy unit if the unit receiving REPs is in observation CT. Artillery units and mode. Artillery units are either in battery or out of battery. Artillery units that are not self-propelled must be in battery to participate in barrages. Likewise, such artillery units must be OOB to move, except that's out of battery. Exception: in battery, 1 hex movement. 7.10.1. Note: all in-battery artillery units are always in tactical mode, while OOB artillery units may be in tactical, MR, or exploit mode. Okay. Reinforcement units and mode. Units that are entering the map as reinforcements enter in tactical mode. They may enter using strat road movement. Stacking. Placing more than one unit in a hex is called stacking. Such a combination of units in the same hex is called a stack. The number of units that may be stacked in a single hex is controlled by the stacking limit, which is usually enforced only at the end of any phase. However, see exceptions for strat move and mech units using road movement. Players may not voluntarily create a stack that exceeds the stacking limit. Such a condition is called an overstack. All overstacks must be corrected in the next friendly movement phase if possible. Overstacks due to retreat due to combat are allowed. Stacking limits. The basic stacking limit in most hexes is 3 units, 2 of which may be battalions. In constricted terrain hexes, the limit is 2 units, only 1 of which may be a battalion. Important: the maximum stacking for a hex is 3 units, 2 if constricted terrain. This means that without using 6.1.2, 6.1.3, or 6.1.4, only 3 companies plus 2 Z-step units could stack in a non-constricted terrain hex. 3 companies plus 2 Z-step units. Exception: strategic movement and mech units during road movement. Note: 6.2, 6.1.2, 6.1.3, and 6.1.4 may increase the number of actual units in the hex. See 6.1.5 and 6.1.6 for summary of stacking. Applying stacking limits. Stacking limits normally apply at the end of each phase. However, there are restrictions that require adherence to stacking limits at all times, such as tactical road movement and strat movement. A side may not end a phase with units voluntarily overstacked. Exception: units that conduct a retreat may overstack with any stack. However, the overstack must be corrected by the end of the next friendly movement phase. When applying 6.1.2, 6.1.3, and 6.1.4, if the units did not start the movement phase stacked together, they may not continue moving once they are in the same hex. They must begin a friendly movement phase stacked together. These units pay all normal movement costs for entering the same hex, including the road movement penalty for entering a hex with another mech unit. Example: a mech infantry battalion uses tactical road movement to enter a hex containing a panzer company. The mech infantry battalion will pay the additional 2 MPs and may move no further than that movement phase. However, the 2 units are immediately treated as 1 unit in accordance with 6.1.2. AFV companies. A German AFV company, 1 full step only, may stack with free or for free with any mech infantry, motorized and armored, mech engineer or recon battalion, hybrid or company-sized unit from the same panzer division. Dismounted mech infantry units are eligible. Note: panzer companies cannot be overstacked for free with breakdown companies. No more than 3, 2 if in constricted terrain, of these company-sized attachments may be in the hex at a time. The 2 units are treated as a single unit, including maximum step loss, as long as they remain stacked together. Although the units are now 1 for all purposes, that 1 combined unit can now contribute the presence of AFVs when determining FSDRMs. Each step counts when determining FS DRMs for unit density. Okay, each step counts. Individual units still count when determining RIBs. When moving, use the MA of the slowest unit. Treat the combined unit as a MU for all movement and stacking purposes. The PR of the battalion or hybrid unit is always used. If both units are company-sized units, use the PR of the company with the lowest PR. Example, the German Panzer Company AFE 1133, which I assume is that one. Looks like that's that one. May stack for free with any of the other types of units shown above. Note, the example does not represent a stack. It is only an example of what type units may allow a Panzer company to stack for free. Mech companies. 2 one-step mech companies that start the movement phase stacked together may be treated as a single unit for all movement purposes when using road movement and strategic road movement. Both companies must be single-step units. They are still considered 2 units for all other purposes. Z-step units. Some companies, usually AT and AFEs, can be broken down into 2 zero-step or Z-step units to provide a wider frontage of AT capability. These units are noted by the lack of a step dot on the unit and the white or red circle behind the type symbol. No more than 2 Z-step units may be present in a non-constricted terrain hex. No more than one Z-step unit may be present in a constricted terrain hex. Z-step units have no effect on stacking, including strat movement and tactical road movement. If Z-step units occupy hex by themselves for FS missions, Z-step units must resolve the first numerical hit as a retreat. If more than one numerical hit is inflicted, the Z-step units are eliminated. Ground assaults. Any hit that cannot be resolved as a retreat eliminates the Z-step units. Designer's note. Some breakdown companies have different combat factors in different games, and thus Z-step units may also vary in strength. Check the unit breakdown diagram for exact composition. Engineer AT units. For each battalion-sized or 2-step hybrid unit in a hex, 1 single-step engineer company or AT company may stack for free. Players may substitute a TD or Panzerjäger company for the towed AT company. No more than 2, 1 if in constricted terrain, of these companies' highest attachments may be in this hex at a time. Example, a player could not have 2 battalions each with an engineer or AT company stacked for free, and then have a 2-step hybrid unit with an engineer or AT company stacking for free. The engineer or AT company is considered part of that battalion. The 2 units are treated as a single unit, including maximum step loss, as long as they remain stacked together. Although units are now 1 for all purposes, that 1 combined unit can now contribute the presence of DRMs when determining FS DRMs. Each step also counts when determining FS DRMs for unit density. Individual units still count when determining RIBs. When moving, use the MA of the slowest unit. The PR of the battalion hybrid is used. Note, situations will arise where a leg and mech unit will be stacked together using this rule. All movement restrictions that apply to each movement class must be adhered to. U.S. Armored Cavalry Battalion. A U.S. M5 company may stack for free with a U.S. Armored Cavalry Battalion. All the rules that apply to engineer AT company stacking with battalions also apply in this case. Note, the M5 company is a substitute for the AT engineer company. It is not in addition to 6.1.4. Stacking. Normal terrain. The list below shows the maximum number of units allowed in normal and constricted terrain. Okay, German and Allied any battalion plus one AFE company and one engineer company or one ATTD company, any battalion plus one AFE company and one engineer company or one ATTD, etc., etc. Maximum of 10 units. The maximum will be less if the battalions are not of the type specified in 6.1.2. Allied. Any battalion plus one ATTD or engineer company, any battalion plus one ATTD or engineer company, that looks identical. Any non-battalion sized unit, if this unit is a hybrid unit, plus one ATTD or engineer company, 2 zero-step units, maximum of 7 units including, or since only 2 engineer or TD-AT companies are allowed, total for the stack, not 3, under 6.1.4. Stacking for, okay, that was stacking for normal terrain. Now we have stacking for constricted terrain. German, any battalion plus one AFE company and one engineer company or one ATTD company. Any non-battalion size plus one AFE company, 1 zero-step unit, maximum of 6 units. How are these different? Maximum of 10 units, maximum of 6 units, 2 zero-step units, 1 zero-step unit. Okay. Note the maximum will be less if the battalions are not of the type specified in 6.1.2. Allied. Alright. Maximum of 4 units, 1 zero-step unit, 1 ATTD company. Oh, wait. So any battalion plus 1 engineer company or 1 ATTD company. Any non-battalion size unit plus 1 unit COI or 1 ATTD COI. Okay. Stacking and movement. Units are moved individually, not in stacks. Whoa, but there are some exceptions. Okay, those look like familiar rules references. Strategic movement. Units using strat movement may not enter a hex already containing an MU. An MU using any other type of movement may not enter a hex with a unit that is marked with a strat movement marker. Exceptions, right there. Static MUs. In-battery artillery units, including in-battery self-propelled artillery, dismounted mech infantry units, mech engineer units conducting any form of construction in a hex with an under construction marker, and headquarters units are ignored for the purposes of road movement stacking. All other stacking restrictions still apply to the conclusion of the movement phase. At the conclusion of the movement phase. See 7.6.3 for road movement stacking. Artillery units that move using one hex in battery movement are considered in battery for purposes of this rule. Mixed mode stacking. Units that are in different modes may be stacked together. Overstack effects. Overstack and GA. Overstacked units suffer a 1-column shift penalty. During ground assault when attacking or defending, stacks may not attack or defend with more units than could legally stack in the hex. The owning player chooses which units do not participate in the GA. Overstacking in movement. Units that are overstacked in the mode determination phase may not enter PA mode. Units that begin a movement or exploit phase overstacked may not use either tactical or strat road movement. Fog of war. Stacks cannot be freely examined by the opposing player. When more than one unit is present in a hex, the owning player is free to choose any non-headquarters unit to be the topmost unit in the stack. Players are always able to view the top unit in a stack, unless that stack is in a FW or fort. Markers with any other FW fort markers do not inhibit a player from seeing the top combat unit. Any specific times within the sequence of play, players are required to divulge information as to, at specific times, divulge information as to the composition of their stacks. Note, do not confuse the term observed or observed unit with the Fog of War rules. Fog of War rules determine what knowledge a player may obtain concerning enemy unit stacks. Observation status determines the ability of a player to target units with a fire support mission, and the ability of friendly units to affect the movement of enemy units. Recon units. When a recon unit ends its movement adjacent to an enemy stack or stacks, the recon unit is able to determine if the stacks have any armor, and if so, if it is a mixed or pure AFE. The owning player reveals the above information, but is not required to reveal the type of AFE or any other information. If the stack is in a field work, the recon unit can examine the top combat unit under the FW marker in addition to the information above. A recon unit may not examine any of the units if the stack is in a hex with a fort. The owning player is only required to reveal the presence of any armor in the hex. Note, the recon does not change the observation status of the units involved. Vantage points. This sounds interesting. Units occupying... Oh, this isn't the actual vantage point rules. Okay. Units occupying a vantage point are entitled to the same level of information as an adjacent recon unit for all enemy stacks within their LOS that are not in observation covering terrain. Designer's note. This is another reason vantage points are important. Fire support. When initiating an FS mission, but before the target hex is selected, the barraging player may, under the following situations, determine if there is armor in a potential target hex. When conducting defensive FS missions, any observed stack, attack designated units, or those units in open terrain. When conducting offensive FS missions, only if the stack is in open terrain or if a unit on a vantage point can observe the potential target hex. After the target hex has been determined, the defending player only is required to reveal the armor and density DRMs. He is not required to reveal actual unit composition, strength, or any other information not required to resolve the FS mission. Ground assault. During step 3 of the GA sequence of play, opposing players determine if armor units will stand off. At that time, both players reveal if they have armor participating in the GA. They are not required to reveal AT capability or type of armor. Movement. Players move their units during the friendly movement and exploitation phases. Displacement due to combat is not considered movement.